So let's get into it. So what happened today? So for those of you who aren't aware, Pete Hegseth last week called basically all the flag officers, generals, admirals, senior enlisted staff, so like command sergeant majors, that kind of the E9s basically, to a meeting. Now, at first, people thought it might have been in North America, but it was actually worldwide. So they recalled it was over 800 officers and um, their senior NCOs to this meeting. And they didn't tell them what it was for. And there's a lot of speculation to it. And of course, I speculated something. At first, I thought it might be um, withdrawing from NATO, because I know that's been one of Trump's picadillos. He's wanted to withdraw from NATO for a while. But that really kind of opens up a whole can of foreign policy worms and rips the sort of illusion off that, it makes the illusion disappear that the world order that's existed for 80 years since post World War II is done. Um, you know, and, so, you know, uh, yeah, so it was really just, people thought it might be, it's like, was it a loyalty test? Is it like there was a lot you probably learned what the Night of the Long Knives was, because that's been floated around for about a week, which that absolutely wasn't, and I never went there. Um, you know, and so really, like, what it turned into, and this is kind of where I was coming to in the last 2 days from the way things were shaping up in the administration, was this was just going to be some kind of spectacle. And it turned out that's exactly what this was. It was just some kind of spectacle for, I said, well, Trump will probably show up and make a speech. But Hegseth had his gigantic American flag behind him, like he was George C. Scott in the famous movie Patton. Um, you know, and he gave his, I guess his mission statement for what he wants the United States military to look like, which is absolutely hostile to women and personnel of color. So yeah, they made that abundantly clear. And there were a few interesting takeaways, but there were also some ones that were really just, I think, were some big missteps from this administration. And I'll get to those in a minute. So some of the highlights were, Hegseth said they're going to do away with a dual physical fitness standard, which that's been a long kind of argument with these bigoted and misogynistic bros that are in the military, that it's like, oh, well, we got to do pull-ups and women can just got to do 90-second hang and, blah, blah, blah. Or women don't have to do this and men got to do this. And, if we're equal, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay, whatever. I'm not going to get into the fact that most of the physical fitness tests now in the military are so antiquated and lead to actual injuries, and they don't really test combat readiness. And we're not even talking about like how the battlefield absolutely changed even in just the last 3 years, and warfighting has completely changed even from the global war on terror and the way we fought things in Afghanistan and Iraq to the way they're fighting in Ukraine right now. The modern battlefield now is less about, let's go up and punch a guy in the face like John Wayne after we're full of whiskey and fire our 6-shooter. That's gone. If you're not a drone operator, if you're not tech savvy, you know, like, yeah, they're still fighting in, basically in Ukraine and small arms fire and unit tactics, but the support now is coming from drones. It's less conventional, like mechanized equipment. It's less heavy equipment and much more cheaper, smaller, reliable uh, tech. So, you know, if you're not studying the war in Ukraine to update your tactics in a modern military setting, you're doing it wrong. That's the next iteration of warfare. So right away, Pete Hegseth is just like his vision for this military is so far out of step and stupid that these generals who are not stupid understand that implicitly. And that's where I'm going to dive into my next thing. Let's get to that part because a lot of people, and I'm former military, right? I was in the reserves. I was uh, a Marine infantryman. I'm a disabled veteran. I've got a disabled rating in the from my time in the Marine Corps. I got injured in a training accident, and that ended my military career. But I have a little bit about, you know, um, I have a little bit of knowledge of what this is. There is a difference between officers and enlisted. You know, your enlisted are guys out of high school or whatever. It's like they're not that educated, not most of the time. Your officers, I'm not saying you don't have idiots and bad officers. You absolutely do. But by the time you get up to becoming a general, you are one of like you're one of the smarter ones. There are idiots and there are egomaniacs and there are problems in that. I've met them, I've seen them, I've heard stories, but they're the exceptions. They're not the norm. Most of your generals are like Mark Milley. You know, um, they've read, they've studied, they know the world situation, they understand the evolving tactics, and they are not these idiots. Like you might have some that buy into this MAGA crap and this Christian nationalism, but that is not the vast majority of them. The vast majority of them, when you get to that level, you are invested in the service you're in. You are invested in the ethos of our military for the last damn near 80 years or more, which is to protect and defend the Constitution and the American people. That's it. That's what you're there for. This is why those stories about like Mark Kelly, when, you know, Trump said, I don't understand, like I think he was at Normandy and he says, I don't understand what was in it for them. It's like suckers and losers and blah, blah, blah. Those generals like Mark Kelly's son who died in combat, those are usually they are or from military families. They are from legacies. Pete Hegseth is a freaking disgrace. I think he was in the reserves, maybe the National Guard. He got as high as major. He was in civil affairs. Yeah, he's got an infantry badge, but he went overseas and they just kind of gave it to him. He was in the rear with the gear. That's why he postures so much. That's why he does all this bravado. That's why everything he says in terms of tactics and strategy and a warfighting ethos is just a bunch of crap. I've met guys like him, and even though I was an infantryman in the reserves, I never went overseas. I never served in combat. I've just studied combat. And it is not something to glorify. And these generals, 100% do not respect Pete Hegseth. And you could absolutely tell. Like Pat just said, dive in and draw fire. That is something that will get you punched in the mouth if you're an officer and you say that to your enlisted men and women where nobody's watching. That is some horse shit. You don't say that kind of crap. What you do say is, we're going to accomplish the mission and we're going to try to get everybody home safe. We're going to try to get everybody home to their families. That should be your focus as a war leader. Because again, these generals, well, which most of them are married, you know, their families have had to make great sacrifice for these folks' career, men and women. And if they're not married, they've had to make sacrifices there too. These are people that put in long hours. And with the way they've screwed up the military, thanks to the Republicans and the war on terror, they have a lot of them, especially with Tommy Tuberville and holding up these promotions, a lot of them have been doing the jobs of 2 or maybe even 3 people in the past few years. They have no respect for these people. None. Zero. So there's that part. Hegseth is not Lloyd Austin. He is not like even Robert Gates. He's not like past Secretary SecDevs. He's not Mark Esper. Which Esper was reportedly a good SecDev who tried to modernize the military. These folks are not, they do not have respect for these people. Not for Hegseth. Hegseth is not someone you respect. He's not. He looks good on camera. That's about it. It's the most you can say about the guy. I'm not even talking about his moral failings as a man and a human being. Or the fact that he's a drunk. Reportedly. Or a sexual assaulter. According to his mother. Who felt the need to write him a letter about how he treated women. All those things matter. You go in and insult these generals for their weight. You go in and insult them because, of wokeness and all this other crap that's just a bunch of gobbledygook that doesn't mean anything. You're talking to a room full of men and women who are very serious people, who have studied, whose sole life mission is their service, their branch of service. No. Pete Hegseth does not deserve to be on that stage. Period. But here's where the miscalculation comes in, because they already knew what kind of person, what kind of man or lack thereof Pete Hegseth was. Then comes our fearful leader, the commander-in-chief, so-called, Donald J. Trump, who gave a slurred, sedated, rambling campaign speech where he talked about the enemy within. And everybody knew in that room what he was asking. Everybody. They knew what he was asking. They knew what he was talking about. They're not idiots. And what he was hinting at and what he was means testing at. But here's the problem with old Donald J. Trump. They don't respect him either. Bone spur deferments. He's old. He's fat. And it's not just being fat, right? See, this is what these fools don't understand. It's not about being overweight in the sense of where they don't like your physical appearance. Because that's what MAGA and all these assholes are about. You can see it what they do with their women. You know how they all get that plastic surgery. They all kind of look the same. Like Laura Loomer, and they all start having all. It's that sort of singular uh, plastic surgery look they all get, and Christy Noem's got it. Laura Loomer's got it. A bunch. What was Don Jr.'s ex-wife? She's got it. They all look the same. You know, the military guys. It's not about being overweight, right? What it's about is self-discipline. And when they look at people like Hegseth, because again, I've been around these guys, right? There's going to be some of them that look at a lot of them. Hey, alcoholism is a disease. I've had troopers, I've had Marines that have struggled with it, yada yada. But it's also a sign of a lack of self-discipline. If there's a conservative mentality in it, that's where it's at. And one second, my cat's getting into something. I'll be right back. What are you doing? All right, you can play with that. Okay. Sorry. I got a kitten named Momo, so he runs around and he gets into things, and it's like I hear something. I'm like, all right, is this inbounds or out of bounds? I'm like, is it something I'm gonna deal with or not? But Trump is just the embodiment of a man with no self-discipline. None, zero, zilch. He has no discipline. He has no self-discipline of character. He has no self-discipline of appetite. He has no self-discipline when it comes to he has no commitment for country or community or organizations that he leads or the people that he leads. And I am talking like people in the military who what they aspire to, the officer corps, that's how they talk. These people, like, they see this. They don't have respect for those folks. Say what you will about Joe Biden being too old. His son, Beau Biden, served. He ultimately died of cancer for being for the burn pits. Trump doesn't have anything like that. But what happened today? What happened today was everybody in that room saw exactly who Donald Trump was. Not the one on the cameras that we all see for Fox News, or they cut and edit the videos to make him sound somewhat coherent, or the close-ups, or all the filters or anything that they do. No. All these generals from all over the world, when there was no reason for them to be there at all, were all put in a room. All of our entire military, all of our military leaders were put in that room, and they saw firsthand what he was. What impression do you think they walked away with? Is that someone, if you were a general or you were an admiral, that you would look at that and go, "Oh yeah, I'll follow a legal order from him." When he comes out and says, you know, that, "Oh, if you want to applaud me, you can applaud me. Just don't laugh. But if you don't like what I'm saying and you get up, well, you're going to lose your rank, and you got to think about your future." You think they're going to follow that man? Because like I was telling Julie today, Julie Roginski on Taco Tuesday, it says, if these dumbasses send troops into American City, for what reason I wouldn't know. But Donald Trump, Just like this meeting where it's just like, "Oh, look at me, ma. I got all these generals just sitting there looking at me. Oh, look how powerful I am. I'm like Putin. I'm like Kim Jong Un. I'm a dictator, ma." Once that happens, if it does, that is a crossing the Rubicon moment. For those of you who aren't familiar with that phrase, that is when Caesar marched his legions into Italy on his way to Rome, which was breaking the law. You were not supposed to march your legions into it at the head of the legions headed to Rome. And the Rubicon was the river. It's basically a little creek. It's very tiny. Of when he crossed that, basically there's no going back. So it's a famous phrase of crossing the Rubicon means, you know, there's no going back. And these generals, they know this. These admirals, they know this. You're given that order to fire on protesters or to round up dissidents who are Democrats or whatever, right? You do that and you carry that out, that's crossing the Rubicon. There, we've had Nuremberg saying I was just following orders. That's not a defense. These are men and women who have studied history. They know the United States Military Code of Justice, the UCMJ. They know it. They know that is not going to be a defense. They know when this administration falls, and I believe it will fall, they will be the first ones on the chopping block. 100%. Because the only way that they would do that, and again, to Courtney's point, Trump has a habit of throwing people loyal to him under the bus. Look at what happened with his attorneys that filed those false claims for the 2020 election. They were threatened with disbarment. I think some were disbarred. There were criminal charges brought forward. This woman who's brought charges against Comey, she'll be thrown under the bus. Almost assuredly. It will happen. Same thing with Kash Patel. Same thing with Pam Bondi. It's all going to happen to them. They've seen this too. Again, these are not stupid people. They're not stupid people. I think by assembling these generals for no good reason, none, and letting them all because this isn't an email, this isn't a Zoom call, this isn't something that you're receiving secondhand, right? You're seeing this what Donald Trump really is, face to face, unfiltered, for yourself. And now you're surrounded by people that you've known for decades, because you got to remember, a lot of these people have served together. They've gone to the same schools. They've gone to the service academies. In the service, they've probably worked in the same billets, or I'm sorry, the same units. And now they're all in Quantico. They're not over the phone. They're not communicating over signal chat. They're not communicating via email. They're all together, face to face. And they get to talk about what they just saw. Hey, man, if he really orders this stuff, what are you going to do? Well, that's something we got to consider. Da-da-da-da-da. They can talk privately amongst themselves. If I were a fascist regime and I was trying to get the officer corps on my side, this is possibly the absolute worst way to go about it, especially in this country. So basically, my take on this was stupid. But that's what Trump does. This is all stupid. It's infuriating, you know? If you're infuriated about this, you should be. It was completely disrespectful. All he did was malign these people over perceived grievances that don't exist, threatening about the enemy within, which are American citizens that they have sworn our democracy, sworn to protect. It's, I'm not trying to say it's not nothing. That's not what I'm trying to say. But this isn't, this is not something that is logistically, if they're going to, you know, head into American cities. They might. I mean, they've been doing it with National Guard, not to any significant degree. You know, reportedly, Memphis doesn't really have any National Guard troops. Portland is what they don't even know if, like, I don't know what the hell's going on there. In Los Angeles, all they really managed to do was hold down kinda 4 city blocks in downtown. You know, there's trying to occupy this country with military force. I mean, dear God, it would take more men and women than there's ever been in the military on the face of this earth, and that includes the Soviets in World War II. Like, you're talking tens of millions. And for what? To occupy what? You know, I think a lot of this stuff, if I'm personally, is just, I think a lot of this stuff with Trump is just, it's the spectacle. This is what it's in his demented mind. They think it makes for good television. And that's what this was today. You know, it's just more, you know, he wanted to be in the room with the generals like Putin, or, he wanted to be like his buddy Vladimir. He wanted to be like Kim Jong Un. It's the reason he wanted to have a military parade on his birthday or whatever. And you saw how the American military handled that. They were like, yeah, whatever, get bent, and just kind of lost it all up, which was funny. Occupying an American city, even a small one, good luck, you know. And what purpose would it be, you know? So Janine asked, "Is there silence a good sign?" Well, yes and no, right? The no is it's neutral, right? It's not a no, like it's a bad sign. No, no, no. Like the military, especially the generals, take great pains to try to appear, politically neutral. Um, you saw that with what he did with Millie during the George Floyd riots. I think it was Washington Square. The one where he held the Bible upside down, and then Millie came out. That was like the beginning of their rift when he came out and apologized for that he shouldn't have been there. That's why most generals, retired generals, like, normally do not speak out on politics unless they're running for office. If they're after they're retired, it's just they take great pains to try to appear politically neutral. That's breaking because of Trump. So it's not now the little things. Normally, like if a president does give a good patriotic speech for, say, the good of the service, at the end they will stand and applaud, right? The fact that after Hegseth gave his speech with his, dive in and draw fire crap, um, there it was pin drop. You could hear a pin drop. It was dead silent, and they were called to attention. You know, they didn't stand for the man. They had to be called to attention. It's little things like that that could mean a lot, you know. And Trump feeling the need to say, "Well, you can applaud, you can do this," and nobody said anything. Yeah, I think that speaks volumes. If I had to put money on it, I think that speaks volumes. Um, so what this means from here, I don't know. Um, I do know what it did do to me, what I saw from that. And this is just my opinion. It shows just how weak they are. That they do not have a grasp on the power that they have. Um, the fact that they felt the need to call all the generals worldwide into one room. Okay. Yeah, that shows you're not very confident and you know, yeah, like yeah, not very confident. They're not confident in who they are and what they do. So I don't think it was good. I think this hurt Trump. I think it was just I think it absolutely didn't help him. It showed the military just how weak he is. If people were supportive of kind of the crazy stuff he's going to do, I think they were kind of in favor of it. I think it softened that support, and if anybody was soft on it, they may just be now neutral. You know, I think it. I think it. No, and the problems he has. Oh, it was absolutely an unforced error. 100%. This didn't need to happen. It was stupid. I mean, you know, that's why I look at people like Stephen Miller and I look at Russell Voigt and I say they're not that smart. They're cunning and they're brazen, but they're not smart because they're not looking down the road at what their actions are going to do. I'm not talking from a moral standpoint. I'm just talking from a logistical standpoint. The Nazis, when they took power, they co-opted the bureaucratic machine of the Weimar Republic. They just folded it into what they had and made them all Nazis. Everybody joined the party, and that was that. Doge went in and started cutting. And, Russell Voigt is like, he wants to cut government. They're talking about it during the shutdown. It's like, okay. So you're basically going to cut the people that run the government that gives you your power. Interesting. Let me know how that works out for you. Mm. It's kind of like, coming into like you're a manager, you come into your area and you start walking around going, I'm a manager. I'm a manager. You guys have to follow what I say. It's like, okay. Um, and I'm gonna fire like 50% of you, and then 30% of you can go home. And the rest you gotta do double the work. How long do you think it's gonna be before that 20% just says, screw you, buddy? You know, and everything starts falling apart. You know. The percentage of generals that are with Trump, I mean, who knows? That's hard to tell. But I mean, really, it's not about with Trump, you know. You probably have some that are, like gonna kiss his ass because they think it's gonna get them a billet or a promotion or whatever. But like actually going along with a coup or like, I mean, that's the thing. There's not really gonna be a coup because the Republicans literally control all of government right now. All of it. They've got governors in multiple states. All this stuff that they're doing with ICE and National Guard in the cities, it's pointless. in the grand scheme of things. Because here's the thing, a lot of folks, they keep asking and they keep talking about it like this. They talk about it in ethics and morality, right? And that's fine, but let's set that aside for a second. Let's talk about it from just power and the levers of power. What have they done in this government that has given them more power? They flaunted traditions, sure. They've broken laws for a little while. So what? I mean, the Supreme Court already gave them that before the election. So, okay. But in the terms of co-opting the apparatus of government, they've cut it damn near past to the bone. Heather Cox Richardson pointed out today, we've let go or forced retired 275,000 government employees. That's the most since World War II in 1 year. That's your power structure. That's your base. You know, Carl Henry asked, could there be a military coup in this country? Sure. Yeah. We've almost had it a couple times. I mentioned Smedley Butler today. There was a plot. That's why he's one of the Marines that's not really mentioned that often. Dan Daly is a two-time Medal of Honor recipient, so Smedley Butler. And Chesty Puller wasn't a Medal of Honor recipient, but he's Chesty. He was the most decorated Marine. But Smedley's not mentioned because he was part of a plot for the military to, right-wing conspiracy. I think it was in during the Depression to overthrow the government. And they got right up to where getting ready to do it, and then Smedley backed out. But his name will ever be forever associated with that. You know, military coup, maybe. It depends on how the thing I think what makes it possible in this case is where let's just say I can envision that scenario, right? Was is um the other guardrails have failed, right? Congress as of now is not really doing anything to rein in Trump. Um the Supreme Court has given him license to do whatever he wants. And, everybody else seems to be just waiting for the clock to run out so they can, quote, go back to normal. If it goes far enough, like Trump is like, getting crazy and like, let's say he wants to launch a nuke. Yeah, I could see generals stepping in and arresting him because no one else is doing it. And then for the good of the country, that could happen. I mean, that's technically a military coup, you know. But a lot of these fanciful scenarios you're going to hear, you notice they never really come to pass is because logistically carrying out an occupation, a real true, you know, occupation of an American city is damn hard logistically. It requires hundreds of thousands of people. And the thing is, what's the point to do it? The thing is, like, the military functions on missions, on strategy, on objectives. What the hell's the objective of sending ICE to Los Angeles? They're fighting fictional enemies at this point because it's all in the mind of Donald Trump so he can gin up his supporters on Fox News. And I don't even know if he knows the line between reality and fiction at this point, you know? Antifa? What is that? Okay, I mean, you're gonna go arrest Democrats? Sure. Be a lot of Democrats. I mean, there's gonna be a ton, you know? And then, you know, like, are they gonna do it? I mean you're talking about a logistical nightmare to basically occupy your own country on your own citizens, and for what? You don't need to take control of elections to do that. Hell, they've proven that already. They've gerrymandered it. They have elections, like Julie Roginski pointed out. They have elections in Russia. They're already doing it. That's what all this, Missouri and Texas and all that's about is so they can basically try to keep the House. And the reason they want to keep the House is whatever House gets in 2026, they're the ones that are going to certify the election in 2028. It's just a desperate attempt to try to hang on to power. Now, yeah, they're going to intimidate the shit out of us. They might have I could absolutely see a plan where they deploy the military to cities during the election time in blue districts to try to, they try to get rid of mail-in voting, which that's not exactly as easy as it sounds because the states handle their own elections. So that's going to be a difficult lift. And if they try to deploy people to polling places, got a lot of work, man. That's a lot of military. That's a lot of logistics. I mean, they'll try. I think they'll try, in certain key places. They absolutely will. But the difference this is why I'm not one of the, I don't freak out as much, is because I've worked in operations management. I've worked in aviation. I've worked in organizations that require a lot of people power, a lot. And I know what it takes to get things to move. I mean, it takes a lot of coordination, a ton. And one thing you got to have with that is you got to have clear, focused objectives. You've got to have achievable objectives. You've got to have great communication and people who understand the mission and who are trained and who are ready to do it. And that's the key, ready to do it. I've seen slowdowns in aviation where people are just like, oh, okay, you want to keep messing with us, manager? You know what? Cool. We're going to slow this operation down. We're going to tank it just to make you look bad. You don't think soldiers don't do that? We saw it during the military parade. I'm gonna tell you right now, the camis and stuff they were dressed in, no, that was purposeful. You know, where they're holding up the drones with their hand instead of flying them. Yeah, that was purposeful. If they go all overboard and they say, "Hey, we're gonna send you in to stop elections and this and that and blah blah blah," oh yeah, vehicles broke down. We couldn't get there. Sorry about that, Chief. Yeah, our bad. Yeah, we're stuck 30 miles outside the city. Don't know what we're gonna do. They didn't make it right, and it makes it to where what you're seeing is a desperate administration that's trying to hang on to power. The problem is, though, they they cut their own throats with, I mean, tariffs, the economy. I think the thing is, if there's going to be an event that is going to really turn people against Trump, and this is, you want to call me a doom and gloom person, it's this. It's when the economy goes into the toilet, because I think they've done enough damage to where you can't stop what's coming. The economy's it's gonna crash. I don't know how bad, but I think that's coming before the end of the year. Um, I think when we have a bad Christmas, it's gonna kick it off. You know, um, there's no denying it at that point. And if Trump, just because he's an idiot and he's a malignant narcissist, decides to have an extra long shutdown, which I don't even know if that's going to happen. I think he might do it for a week, and then it's just like, oh, we've reached a deal, because it's the Trump cycle. It's like, create a problem that identify a problem that doesn't exist, create the problem that doesn't exist. The problem actually becomes a problem. Stop the problem you creative, achieve, and then declare victory. That's Trump. This time though, and Argentina, and I think I might write about that tomorrow, is a good example of that. Is the metrics across the board on the economy and farming and tourism and manufacturing, consumer confidence and spending, housing, you name it, man. Like nothing is good. Like if it's like you're sitting in Chernobyl and the red lights on the board just start flashing everywhere, and you're like, holy hell. Yeah, I think that's what we're looking at. So yeah. Yeah, for those of you who don't wear Argentina, this is pretty much what it is. Argentina, the guy they hired is like their president was this crazy ass liberal, and so all the bros and the tech bros were like, "It's going to be the most amazing economy ever." Well, of course, it tanked in a few years, and the farm aid that the Trump administration wants to give Brazil, which is about Argentina, which is about $22 billion, is going to one man. It's a billionaire in Argentina, and he's friends with our Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. And guess who just one of the countries that just got the soybean contract from China? Argentina. So what just happened is that Argentina, which was put in the toilet by these freaking unencumbered capitalistic tech bro people, just got a bailout for one billionaire to the tune of $22 billion and got China's contracts all because we have tariffs on China. So while our soybean farmers have lost out and lost that market, we bailed out Argentina so they could then pick up those contracts. Ask those MAGA farmers, are we great again yet? Are we America first yet? Doesn't seem like it. You got to laugh at this sometimes, man, because it's just so unreal. You're just like, it's just, you can't. If I wrote this down as a movie, I'd get, you know, like, yeah, I'd get kicked out, you know. Yeah, Joe, I know you recently said you were scared. It's like, I mean, I understand. Look, this is a scary thing. It's outside the norm. You know, it's not something that is normal. And, but part of why I want to do these things is like, you get a lot of noise where it's like, we heard, oh, it's not in the long knives. They're gonna kill all the generals. It's like, that didn't happen. They're gonna occupy every American major city, all the major American cities in the country. Oh my God. It's like, we really don't have the capacity to do that. No, Pat, sassy Frederick is fine. I get sassy sometimes. But no, I mean, that's just, yeah, it's, I don't think anything good is going to come from this until we're through with the Trump administration. Um, I don't know what is coming. I don't. And I don't think it will be anything good. My concern is the people that are supposed to be stopping this, i.e. the Supreme Court and Congress, are not going to do it. It is going to fall to us. I don't, and there's ways we can resist. Which is, general strikes, lowering consumer spending, boycotts, which have been proven to be effective. Target, Disney, you know, like I think what's going to be telling is if the economy turns in a direction when the elites start losing their money, and they go, oh, this is hurting us. It's like, yeah, you're with the rest of us. We'll see then. Because here's the key to this, right? Here's the key to all this. When dictators come into power, these fascist parties, at first they generally make lives better for their people and which is a significant portion of the population economically. Sometimes that's at the cost of a minority or a marginalized group, but they typically make people's lives economically better for their supporters. What Trump has done, because they're grifters and they're con people, and that's how they treat their base, they've made life for their base significantly worse. And if the economy crashes, their rich elite that thought they were going to clean up and they were untouchable, oh, they're going to be touchable. So and that's kind of where I'm looking at this thing from today. And I'm looking at some of the other stuff that they do, like all the National Guard that go into the cities and everything else. It's purely ego driven. There's no strategic objective, not even for a fascist takeover. Doge, there was no strategic objective there other than letting, Elon Musk get his hands on all our data and letting and personally enriching him, right? And getting, all the investigations he had, against him off the table. But even that, look what happened to Tesla. Now he's got more power there. And, it's like, oh, I got a contract where it's like, I'm going to be first trillionaire, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, not if Tesla goes under there, dipshit. That's why I say these people aren't smart. They're impulsive. They're brazen. They're cunning. They have no morals. They're sociopaths. Smart? No. Strategically speaking? No. That doesn't make them any less dangerous. In fact, that makes them more dangerous. Because to paraphrase Dietrich Bonhoeffer, at least with evil, right? There's a purpose there. There is a morally stupid people that are driven by like, you know, sociopathy, psychological impulse, all this other stuff. There is no purpose. It's just crazy, right? It's just horribleness. And that is, mm, that's why they're dangerous. Besides the wrongs they're doing and the ethics and everything else, they're dangerous because it's like, it's not them hurting themselves. It's not like somebody running in and touching a hot stove. It's like somebody running in with a pail full of gasoline and TNT in the other hand, getting ready to throw it on the hot stove while we're standing in the kitchen. They're gonna blow us all up. That's the problem. You'd say the person with the pail of gasoline and TNT, they're not smart. They're freaking stupid. They're brazen. They're going to do, and their stupidity is going to hurt the rest of us. That's why these people need to be stopped. They're dangerous. You know, they are dangerous as hell. Nice, Amy. Puppy pooped. Amy's one was like, it's like a puppy who pooped in the house and then the Roomba got it. Yeah, kind of. That's a better analogy, I think, than mine. I like that one. But yeah. But, I just wanted to kind of give you folks a little perspective on what I think happened today. Um, it's, you know, every day it's like, okay, you know, just look at that. It's like, okay, all right, I guess, it's like, you know, I hope one day to get put out of a job where I don't talk about this stuff. Just, you know, like, where I get to talk about something other than this crap. You know, I hope we all do. And we will. I know we will. We've been through this stuff before, you know, and we've gotten through it. And we will again, you know. So, yeah, we'll get through it. Just got to keep going. Just keep going and just do what you can, you know. Like, yeah, that's it. So, just make sure your support networks are there. You're talking to folks, and we'll get through it. You know. Anyway, I appreciate all y'all for coming in. Thank you for letting me unload and have a little bit of a therapy session. And I hope this helped. Um, you know, and I will see you guys later. So thank you again. Bye.